It is the height of summer in the year 1242, and the heavy iron portcullis of a mighty fortress slams shut with a final metallic clang. The castle, designed as a symbol of power and dominance, has just transformed into a prison for the 2,000 souls trapped within its stone embrace. An enemy army has encircled the walls, cutting off all supply lines and preparing for a war of attrition that will last for months. While the commanders on the battlements worry about arrows and battering rams, an even deadlier enemy is already beginning to form inside the crowded courtyard. It is an invisible enemy, born of biology and neglect, that will assault the senses before it destroys the body. The first few days of the siege are marked by a frantic energy as soldiers and adult refugees prepare for the assault. But as the weeks drag on, the castle, which was built to house perhaps 200 people, begins to suffocate under the weight of 10 times that number. The most immediate and pressing problem is the management of human and animal waste. In peacetime, the castle latrines, known as guard robes, empty into the moat or a cesspit outside the walls. However, the moat is now stagnant because the enemy has dammed the stream, and the waste begins to pile up at the base of the walls, creating a noxious cloud that rises with the heat. Inside the courtyard, the situation is far worse, as there are simply not enough facilities for the masses of people. The frantic defenders and the terrified civilians relieve themselves in corners, in stables, and eventually in the open thoroughfares. The ground turns into a quagmire of mud and excrement, a toxic sludge that clings to boots and hems of dresses, tracking filth into the great halls and the sleeping quarters. The smell becomes a physical weight, a thick, cloying miasma of ammonia and methane that burns the eyes and coats the throat. There is no escape from it, for the high stone walls that keep the enemy out also keep the stench in, trapping the foul air like water in a bowl. Compounding this sanitary disaster is the presence of livestock driven inside the walls to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. Hundreds of horses, cattle, pigs, and chickens are crammed into the lower bays, standing shoulder to shoulder in the sweltering heat. These animals produce mountains of dung every day, which cannot be removed or thrown over the walls without exposing men to enemy archers. The animals must also be slaughtered for food as the grain supplies run low, turning the courtyard into an open-air abattoir. The blood of the butchered beasts soaks into the earth, mixing with the filth to create a breeding ground for billions of flies. These insects become a plague in themselves, covering every surface, landing on the food and crawling over the faces of the sleeping men. As the siege wears on, water becomes the most precious and dangerous commodity in the fortress. The castle well dug deep into the bedrock is pushed to its limits by the thirsty multitude. Slowly, inevitably, the groundwater begins to be contaminated by the seepage from the overflowing latrines and the animal waste. The water takes on a foul taste, but the defenders have no choice but to drink it, sealing their fate with every sip. This is when the dysentery strikes, the dreaded bloody flux that kills more soldiers than any sword or spear. It starts with stomach cramps and fever, quickly progressing to a violent bloody diarrhea that dehydrates the victim within days. Men who stood strong on the ramparts are reduced to shivering skeletons lying in their own filth, too weak to lift a weapon. The infirmary becomes a scene from hell, where the floor is slick with bodily fluids and the air is unbreathable. There are no medicines to stop the infection, only prayers and vinegar sponges that do little to mask the odor of impending death. Then comes the problem of the bodies, for death is a daily visitor even without a direct assault. In normal times, the dead are taken out to the parish cemetery, but now the gates are barred and the enemy waits outside. The bodies must be disposed of within the castle, but the ground is too hard and crowded for deep graves. Corpses are wrapped in shrouds and stacked in cool cellars, but as the numbers rise, they are piled in dead-end corridors or unused storage rooms. The summer heat accelerates the decomposition, and the sweet, sickly smell of rotting flesh begins to mix with the sharp stench of the latrines. The bodies bloat and leak fluids, attracting rats that scurry boldly through the halls, growing fat on the misery of the garrison. The besieging army knows exactly what is happening inside, and they use this biological horror as a weapon of psychological warfare. They load their trebuchets not with stones, but with the carcasses of dead horses or the bodies of soldiers who have died of plague in their own camp. These rotting projectiles are hurled over the walls, exploding on impact in the courtyard and showering the defenders with disease and gore. It is a terrifying display of medieval biological warfare designed to spread panic and pestilence among the trapped population. The sight of a decomposing body flying through the air and landing in the town square breaks the morale of the civilians faster than any fire arrow. The defenders try to cover the mess with quicklime, but the supply is limited and the psychological damage is done. The psychological toll of living in this sensory nightmare is immense. The constant smell triggers a primal disgust response in the brain, leading to depression, lethargy, and a loss of the will to fight. The inhabitants exist in a state of sensory overload where the nose is constantly assaulted and the stomach constantly turns. Food, what little is left of it, tastes of the smell, as if the stench has permeated the very grain and salted meat. The bread is baked with flour that may have been contaminated by rat droppings, and the meat is often on the verge of turning. To eat is to gamble with one's life, but to starve is a slower, more painful death. In the final stages of the siege, the castle is no longer a military fortification, but a tomb for the living. The silence of the dead is replaced by the groans of the sick and the buzzing of the flies. The knights in their shining armor are now covered in rust and filth, their grandeur stripped away by the basic biological needs of survival. When the gates finally open, either because the defenders surrender or because a relief force arrives, the scene that greets the outsiders is one of absolute horror. The liberating soldiers often retch at the smell that rolls out of the gatehouse, a dense fog of death that clings to the stones for years. The survivors who stumble out are pale, emaciated ghosts blinking in the sunlight, their clothes stiff with months of accumulated grime. The cleanup of a castle after a long siege is a task that takes months and requires a massive effort. The top layer of soil in the courtyard often has to be removed completely and carted away to purge the earth of the toxins. The rooms are fumigated with strong herbs like rosemary and sage, and the walls are whitewashed with lime to kill the lingering pestilence. Historians often focus on the heroic charges, the strategic maneuvers, and the clash of steel. They rarely describe the months of waiting in a pit of one's own waste, watching friends die of dehydration and disease. The reality of medieval warfare was not glorious. It was a gritty, smelly, and undignified struggle for survival against biology itself. The stench of a siege was the smell of humanity stripped of civilization, reduced to its most basic and terrifying functions. It serves as a reminder that the thickest stone walls cannot protect us from the enemies that come from within. The castle, that romantic symbol of the Middle Ages, was in reality a trap that could turn into a septic tank of death within a matter of weeks.